Well, hi everybody out there. Welcome to a new edition of House of Mourning. Um, we always do something a little different here. It's been months since I've recorded anything. I've made a move. I'm living in a new location, and God has been really showing me some amazing things. Some of them I'm going to share with you today are not, some of you aren't going to like, particularly those of you that love church. There's nothing wrong with church. I want to preface this by saying that there's nothing wrong with church and that God doesn't dislike church. But He doesn't like the non-aggressive nature of church. Church has become a business. You don't get members of a church by giving offensive, harsh messages. And the people have responded by leaving churches that do have this practice. I've spoken to pastors who no longer pastor churches anymore because they started giving the hard messages, and when they started giving the hard messages, the people left. People wanted to hear about prophecy and fruits of the Spirit and miracles. They did not want to hear about how God wanted them to take the hurt areas of their life, step out into the unknown so they can be healed. Sometimes it requires a little effort on our part, and people don't want to do it. God has been speaking to me and other people and saying, there's two things that I'm going to force people into a position to do. And the first thing that He's going to do is de-emphasize the importance of ordainment on paper. There are a lot of good men and women who are ministers and who are ordained and who speak well and give the good message of God, and I'm certainly not trying to take away from that. However, people have put too much emphasis on documentation and schooling. Early apostles were not schooled. Neither was Jesus Christ. There was Jewish requirement to know certain scriptures as part of the religion, but that's not ordainment. That's not high priesthood. That's just typical. In our society, people disrespect and disregard anybody that isn't carrying a degree or doesn't have expansive tele-evangelistic ministry or awards. Everything is about paper. A prophet in our country, a real prophet, not one that speaks about kidnappings of third world dictators or miracles or things that are going to happen that, by the way, never take place. A real prophet would not be accepted in our country because he'd come looking like John the Baptist and not having the credentials to prove to us that he could do anything more than yell a lot. And we wouldn't hear his message. And so that's God's first message. And the second message is, I'm going to bring back Book of Acts style ministry. Now, he's actually been saying this to me and my mentor, Tom Harvey, for 2.5, 3 years. He wants people to be in little communities. And when you say community, people start thinking of cults and behavior control and brainwashing. But what God is actually speaking about in the community venue is what we would call cell group ministry. Now, there's cell group ministry, and then there's dangerous, gonna hurt a little bit, gonna sting a little bit, cell group ministry. That's what God's talking about. And what's coming to us is going to be a de-emphasis on Sunday morning church and a re-emphasis on small group ministry. When people gather in groups and men confess to each other in groups, I have a problem with porn, I have a problem with this, I have a problem with that, I have a problem with drug addiction, I have a problem with alcohol, and healing begins to occur because that's the way God wanted us to heal. That's the formula He set up. We would confess our sins to each other and then exhort each other. When you're sitting in a pew on Sunday morning, you're not confessing anything to anybody. In fact, you larger churches are a particularly really good place, and I'm guilty of this. This is how I know. 600 or more members, you can hide real easy in a large church. And healing doesn't occur, and growth doesn't occur. And a lot of you have this idea, and as ministers especially, of the word stagnation. Stagnation is like neutral position in a car. It's neither growth nor falling behind. In Christianity, there is no neutral position. You're either advancing or you're retreating. There is no middle position. So So take a look at your life right now and say to yourself, well, gee, what am I doing right now? Do I feel always down? Like by Wednesday, am I flatlining spiritually? Am I having trouble keeping up with God and everything that I need to have going right in my life? If that's the case, you're falling behind. I would gather that in most churches, most people, by Sunday, have you ever watched altar calls? People go up weeping and just hurt and broken. Why is that happening so frequently? Is there really that much stuff in people's lives, or are the same things are they asking for healing for the same things over and over again? Now, I wanted to point something out here in the book of Acts, chapter 2, verses 46 and 47. We were given the example of how God wanted us to follow the faith, and we have done everything but. It says, they followed a daily discipline of worship in the temple, followed by meals at home. Every meal a celebration, exuberant and joyful as they praised God. People in general liked what they saw. Every day, their numbers grew as God added to those who were saved. You read further into Acts, and you see them constantly gathering and discussing things, and they're living almost communally. A lot of people like to say, well, they were communist. That was the first communist formula. It really wasn't, because God wasn't forcing them to do it. It was voluntarily, which is more like a utopian society. Everybody shares because they know it's good for everybody else, not because some person comes and say you will share and that's the way it's going to be. That's the difference between utopia and communist. Communist, it's a forced share. Utopia, it's everybody does it because they know it's what's best. We were given this formula of small group, of small gatherings being equal, at least equal, to temple worship. And notice it doesn't say they went to hear a pastor or a minister speak. It says they went there for worship. So we have half of it right. On Sunday morning, we go to church to worship. And most of us worship for a good 40 minutes. But the part where we're not getting it is we think that being a member of the youth group, like helping America's youth, or maybe being a member of the worship team, or serving in child care, or maybe being an office member, that's the ministry. And when God says outside the four corners or the four walls of the church, we take that to mean a barbecue or the occasional community outreach. What God is actually asking us to do is preach the gospel. People don't want to preach the gospel. They'll use cop-outs like, well, I preach the gospel at work. Well, I'm sorry, but you know what? If the disciples and the apostles had done that, the gospel would have never been preached. If they had said, well, you know, my circle of people that I hang out with, they'll hear the gospel. Do you think we would be Christians right now? They went out on the limb. They put their butts out on the line and were persecuted constantly as a result. That's not done here in America. In America, we kind of regard it as a Toastmasters club or a VFW without the beer. We kind of sort of do something, but it's, well, whatever. Well, the fact of the matter is, folks, is we really need to knuckle down and get serious and get dangerous with God. Now, I started a new ministry. It's called Walking Dead Ministries. It's an example. I don't want people to look to me as a minister. I'm not ordained, but as I told you, I don't think that matters much. I think the time is now, and the time is here. Here and now, that we are supposed to spread out amongst each other, lead each other, exhort each other, and help each other heal. And you will see a great awakening. If you want to check out more and see more information, the website is walkingdeadministries.webs.com. It's there on the bottom of the screen. And email is walkingdeadministries@gmail.com. That's today's message. I hope God blesses you.